What's up everybody, it's Jeremy here from Oceanbound, and y'all ready for this? The following is my review of the V3 F1 Strike after a dozen sessions on my 5.5 meter. I've been eagerly anticipating these wings. You know, what are they going to change? Will they be more durable? Will they change the handles? Will the parts I love about them get better, or will they get worse? So a little bit of background. I've rocked out on the F1 wings since the beginning, starting with the V1 Swing Wing, and then the V1 Strike, the V2 Strike, and now I have the V3s. They've totally suited my style of riding, and as many of you know, I base a lot of my reviews on comparing other wings to the F1s that I ride. So am I biased? Yeah, sure, a little. I love these wings. But since F1 doesn't, send me any wings and they don't give me any discounts, I don't mind being critical on some things too. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, I got a lot to cover, so enough with my fluff and on with the Strike stuff. The F1's marketing team leads off the Strike with conceived from the latest technologies and featuring a revolutionary design. The Strike V3 is the ultimate performance wing. Whether it's free ride, freestyle, surfing, or free fly, the state-of-the-art wing can do it all. The Strike V3 delivers unparalleled performance while guaranteeing comfort, stability, power, precision, durability, and the ability to go upwind quickly and efficiently in any winds. Alright then, that certainly checks a lot of boxes. We'll break it down a little, starting with the materials. A lot's changed this year, and change is good, right? Well, out of the box, it feels stiffer and just beefier all around. The leading edge material is noticeably stiffer when you handle it deflated. They've introduced new materials for the leading edge and also for the trailing edge. The middle of the canopy is still the same as a kite material. They call it Technoforce D2 52 gram, where the trailing edge is now this stronger 66 gram kind of canopy material, which almost looks like a micro version of the main canopy ripstop. The new material on the leading edge is called Hi-Tex, and it comes in two different weights. Hi-Tex is a innovative, high-tenacity polyester fiber with an enhanced, high-quality weaving and coating that increases the fabric's resistance. They list the Hi-Tex locations as the 178 gram, the thicker stuff is in the center strut and the center of the leading edge, and the thinner 158 gram is out on the leading edge tips. It's worth noting that the tips and a few points farther out on the leading edge are reinforced with Kevlar. Kevlar, baby! Bulletproof. So they have new materials. What are they trying to do here? They're trying to increase stiffness and longevity. One of the costs is weight. The V2 Strike 5.5 meter was 2.21 kilograms or 4.9 pounds. The V3 Strike's weight is 5.5 meter is 2.5 kilograms or 5.5 pounds. So it's over a half a pound difference. The new materials are going to have an effect on how this wing distributes load, ages, and whatnot. They say the V3 uses stiffer materials which allow it to maintain its original design of its inflatable structure in the long term. This boosts its light wind performance, which depends a lot on the tension of the trailing edge, thus the stiffness of the leading edge. The different new material weights in different areas offers performance and resistance to deformation. But they didn't just change the materials, they also changed the design. The design this year is a lot more flat. There's a lot of wings in the industry are kind of trending. It's kind of heading towards a unit or maybe like a PPC wing. And that's kind of a big deal because, the lightweight and the dihedral of the V2s are kind of what made them what they are, and they're going away from that. But a flatter design means that, you can tighten the canopy more, probably reducing leading edge thickness, and they're kind of preloading the leading edge with more tension, so as the wings age, they should be able to maintain a tight canopy, in theory, if everything expands uniformly. From their marketing, with the Strike V3 delivering stability beyond compare, we could have a flatter dihedral angle and thus reach a bigger projected area. In turn, the power and the pumping abilities are even more improved for planing starts. This allows riders to use a smaller wing or a board than before. The new and slightly more compact outline with less span makes the Strike V3 easier to pump and ride. The center of the traction has been perfectly placed, right in front of the rider to guarantee a perfect balance in both arms. The trailing edge has a different material, heavier weight, but there isn't, reinforcement stitching on the trailing edge like other companies do. Like Ozone, for example, I've seen them double over their fabric and stitch that on the trailing edge for reinforcement. So I think F1 is assuming that the new material won't stretch as much, and if it does, they kind of want it to stretch more uniformly across the whole canopy and not just bag out in the center while keeping the trailing edge tight. Look at the way that they sewed the panels in the canopy. This isn't just a clever lightning bolt kind of design. This is some sailing engineering right here, their words not mine, but quoting their website, strictly referring to the panel layout, is mastering the kite's loads to maintain the desired shape for the longest time. I'm skeptical, they're confident, time will tell. There is a load diffusing tail on the end of the strut and the leading edge that's now made of like a stiff material, which is mylar and dacron, which does necessitate a different way of folding the wing, but thankfully they print the folding directions inside the bag, so you don't have to watch a YouTube video to figure out the best way to do that. And I think it was a little weird the first time I did it, but now it's an easier job. I actually like this folding method better. Okay, so pumping the wing. The new stiffness, they say, can surprise regular users of the previous version because it has led to small changes in the pumping technique, thus requiring some adaptation. The pumping has to be firmer with a higher pace and less amplitude than the V2. Almost 2 movements of the V3 for one of the V2. So once this pace is achieved, you understand that the V3 allows you to glide faster on the water and to experience a quicker takeoff. I totally agree that the higher pace pumping works when you're on flat water. I thought I had it down over multiple sessions, but until I went into choppy waters, and it was more or less finding myself going back to the old way of pumping. But what I do respect is that they did address this, and so at least the user has the tools to try a different technique, and one that does seem better than the old technique. Before I get into my opinions, a few other small details worth mentioning. The color of mine is onyx, which is really nice, darker than I thought, less blue, and the dark color or maybe the materials shows the salt really easily. They now have separate inflation, aka no more one pump. I really didn't think I'd like this, but I love it. The only issue I have is since I typically don't use a gauge in my pump, I've got to learn the sound without a gauge. And so the 5.5 meter, the leading edge is 9 psi, the center strut is 10 psi. I like 10, but I usually just flick the leading edge to hear the sound, and I'm not used to flicking the strut, and the strut has a higher pitch because it's smaller in size and has a lot less volume. The V2 5.5 said to pump it to 8 psi, although I always went, higher than that. So I'm down with the higher pressure and the fact that they're using materials suited for higher pressure. The thread and the seams at this point is probably the weakest part of the equation. So I think at least one session, the leading edge wasn't as solid as the other sessions I had, and I noticed some folds in the leading edge kind of near the strut. And now I know a properly inflated leading edge will not bend at all or have like a slight fold in the center where it meets the strut. The handles are stiffer. So, for people that wanted hard handles, it's not a terrible compromise. The market seems to be moving towards hard handles. And I've tried hard handles. I love them. I have a unit. I'm honestly skeptical of the cons that I hear of the handles. I've heard that they can damage boards. Well, all of my boards have received more damage from my elbows and my knees and my head more than anything. So yeah, I'm sure something hard like a handle could damage your board. I know it's happening, but it hasn't happened to me or any of my friends, so I'm skeptical when people use that argument. The other complaint I'm hearing some die-hard F1 fans using is that handles are now giving people wrist issues. I can see that in some ways, but since not everyone using hard handles are complaining, it really seems to depend on the physiology of the individual. So if you're, death gripping your handles and your wrists and forearms are never really, lined up and you ride like that all the time, okay, yeah, that could be an issue, but, mix it up. Use your fingers in different ways. Keep a lighter grip on the handles, Also, different companies are putting their handles on different angles, so maybe some angles are worse than others. But like I said, I think it depends more on the user. But in general, I think these handles are the best of both worlds. They're stiffer than the previous versions, but they still have about the same grip in your hands. The leash, exactly the same, don't worry about that, and you do get a pump adapter. Thank you, F1, for caring. Okay, so how does it feel to me? The jumping. The jumping's great. It definitely flies better and there's more hang time. And this is a great improvement over the V2. The weight, it feels heavier. It definitely drifts a little different, but not a deal breaker. I'd say most wings out there on the market are heavier than this wing. But it is noticeable in the light wind, let's say like onshore wind and some waves, you can definitely feel the heaviness. The tighter canopy is great. You know, this means less dihedral. I think it does make it maybe a little less comfy for beginner riders, but the power isn't as progressive as it used to be. The structure of the leading edge stays, you know, relatively rigid. The one part I did notice that flexes a lot is near the corner of where the leading edge and the trailing edge meet, and there's like a small diffuser there. There seems to be some like flapping on the trailing edge. And there is a lot of stitching in that area, so my guess is they are aware of this flap or flex. It's probably a necessary thing to have some give somewhere, and that trailing edge is required for, you know, the pumping of the quicker wing and the fact it's stiffer. But, you know, we'll see how this area ages and if it gets any flappier before the other parts of the canopy or the trailing edge. The power is a little hotter or quicker to engage, and I like that. Coming around an upwind tack is different, and you kind of snap into the power with a tug, where it used to be kind of more a smooth and gradual catch, and you can use that to get some acceleration in your tack. You can pull your front hand close to your body and it almost starts to backwind a little. That was something that the V2 wouldn't really do, I suppose because it's got more dihedral, but it doesn't bother me at all. A lot of these aspects remind me of a unit. Flipped upside down, it does actually take flight now, so that's a little weird, so watch out, definitely secure your wing. And it does take off on the water more and then slam down hard, again due to less dihedral. The balance in between my hands is really nice, and in general I feel like my arms have been more balanced, but it could just be the wind angles I've been riding. You know, I did kind of mention this, but you do need a different technique when pumping the wing. I've pretty much gotten the hang of it. In light winds, it works really well. In flat water, not so much the chop. So when I'm pumping really quickly in the chop, I tend to bury the wingtip more. The burying of a wingtip is a kind of a new thing. My guess is, you know, that's from having less dihedral. Since the V2 and the V3 seem to have really similar wingspans, the more dihedral will push that wingtip farther back, and the V3 with less dihedral, I just feel like I'm bumping that wing either on the water or the front of my board a lot more than I used to. The V3 definitely goes upwind better. I'll take that. I may actually be using it for racing this summer. That'd be rad. For power, it definitely has more power. I've seen people mention that the V2 had a lot of power, and that just was not my experience. I've always rigged bigger than other riders, but finally the V3 feels more like other wings of similar size because of the larger, you know, projected area than that flatter design. So I do think that the V3 actually has better low end than that of the V2. You just need to learn the right pumping technique. And I love riding juiced for speed and big air, and this wing, you know, takes that no problem. I've taken the 5.5 out in 30 miles an hour without issues. I still have my 4.5, you know, sitting in the plastic bag. It still came in totally sealed. For me, this 5.5 is really an amazing do-it-all size. I'm cool with riding it from 14 miles an hour to 30, and I'm around 77 kilograms or 170 pounds for anyone that's trying to do the math. The handles are fine. Yes, I love hard handles, but these are stiffer than the V2, not much, but it's noticeable, and I'm totally fine with these. They're kind of the best of both worlds. The placement of the handles is great. They feel really balanced in hand, and for whatever it's worth, the transition, you know, to the leading edge handle is easy. Some wings have like an awkward distance from the front strut handle and the leading edge handle, but this one's super easy and intuitive. So what are my final thoughts? Am I happy with the new wings? Yes. My riding has progressed, and it almost feels like the different versions they're making to suit my progression. Do I have any regrets? No, I'm stoked. It's still one of the best wings out there for a lot of reasons. Maybe one regret is not saving enough money, you know, while I was waiting for them to arrive, because these two wings, you know, they definitely hurt my wallet this year. My favorite improvements, the tighter canopy, because it feels like it's more high performance, more powerful wing that just jumps a lot better. My least favorite thing is the higher cost or like the added weight, but I've asked for wings that are less prone to bagging out. So I think all of the improvements are there to address that. So that's a sacrifice I totally accept. Its drift is a little different, but it's still great, and I can totally live with that. It's still so much better than other wings out there. So I'm going on record, officially stoked on the V3 Strike. I really love all the changes. It's one of the best wings I've tried, and it's certainly suiting my current level of riding. Alright, so that's all I got on this one. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments. If you want to see some more of my videos, please consider hitting that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And with that, I hope all of you guys are doing well out there. I'll see you guys soon on the flip, and I wish you all an awesome day. Later!